Alright, hi guys. This is our tutorial on how to create a custom rubric. Creating a custom rubric is a great way to quickly and easily assess student work and give feedback, especially if you find that you use the same rubric over and over again. So this tutorial will show us how to create that. If you haven't already, open up the course you want to work in, go to your grade setup menu, and then over on the right where you have scales and rubrics, we're going to click add, and we're going to create a new rubric. Now you can call this rubric whatever you want, but this is a custom rubric that we're working on. Custom rubrics, again, we customize to create what we want. They're not typically tied directly to a learning objective because we don't need to align them. But when we do this, what we can do is we can create whatever criteria, description, and scale that we want to. So if I was maybe grading a presentation, a project that had presentation maybe as part of it, maybe I grade the project as a thing, and you can list whatever details you want and how well they did, and then I can add more criteria, and I can say maybe the presentation was a different part of it. And again, you've used these rubrics, you know what your scales and what your areas are, so you can have this all set up. Again, a thing to keep in mind is the grading scale. You can label it whatever you want to. The label is the feedback that the students will see for each of these criteria. So if you just want to tell them, hey, you did good on this project part, or you did good on the presentation part, you can label that. But if you need to detail this, you can put in whatever you want to. So maybe, spoke loudly for whole class to hear. You can label it whatever you want as your feedback that they get. The thing to keep in mind is when you are using this point value represents a percentage of the total. So for example, if I grade a student as a 2 for their project and I grade them a 2 for their presentation, while I'm saying that's satisfactory, my overall score is going to be a 4 out of 8 total points possible. And in the grade book, if I'm using the standard letter-based scale, that's going to come in as an F. Right? So it's kind of, we want to make sure that our feedback represents the grade that they're getting. So if a 2 is satisfactory, then it can't be an F in the grade book because that's not satisfactory, right? But if we want to adjust these point values, we can. So instead of saying it's this project portion is out of a 4, maybe I want to adjust it to a 10-point scale, and I'll say an excellent is a 10, and then I can say that a good is actually an 8 out of 10, and satisfactory is a 7 out of 10. And it needs improvements, you can make a 6 out of 10, or maybe a 5 out of 10 if you want to push down into that F range. Basically what you're doing is you're just pre-building in scores that you can quickly and easily grade that tie feedback directly to why they received that score. One of the cool things that you can do actually, so let's go ahead and finish this. And if I create this, and I click create, it's going to make that custom rubric here where I can apply it to any assignment that I want to when I work on it. So as I make my practice assignments or my real work, when I'm editing those, I have the option now, instead of doing it to a scale, I can tie it to my rubric that I made. And when I save that rubric, when I'm actually going in and grading this, the kids will see, like, here's the categories and the feedback, just like your standard rubrics that you've always used. But when I go to grade it, I'll be able to pull the rubric up and I can quickly and easily give feedback. Now, one of the nice things is I can customize feedback to go with it by adding my comments in here. Now, you will notice that I can't provide recorded comments into the rubric, but I can give type comments specific to that criteria. And then I can use this assignment and this score to go into the grade book. One of the things I wanted to show you with these custom rubrics, though, is you might be thinking to yourself that if I want to adjust to using a rubric that uses this, let's say this one that I set up, this 10, 8, 7, 5 scale, you might think, well, that's going to be a lot to have to change that scale every time. Well, that's where their grade setup scales actually come in. So one thing you can do is if you go into scales and you click add scale, I'm going to call this my rubric scale. So if you use your own custom rubric scale, You can do a point-based scale. I should have waited. Call this my rubric scale. But I can set that scale value up here. So if I said 10 was my, and I can label it differently. Let's say 10 is advanced for me. I can give custom feedback, whatever I want. But then let's say my next level I wanted was an 8, and that's proficient. And then maybe I want a level that was my 7, and I'm going to say that that is my basic understanding. And then I'll have a emerging. And I might find that I want to be able to give a 0 for something. So I could put a 0 value in there and just say that there was no attempt. Maybe they didn't do that thing. But if I make this scale first and then I save my scale, here's what's cool. I don't have to use that scale only in grading an assignment directly. What I can do then is I can go into my rubric, and if I click on Add Rubric, then I can pull up another blank rubric, and I can call this my custom scale rubric, because what I can do then, I can add my same criteria. We'll call it project, and then so you can see the difference, I'll put my presentation in there. But what happens now that I've created my own scale, if I look up here under apply grading scale, it turns blue and I can apply that rubric scale and watch what happens to all of my scaled categories. It automatically jumps into that scale that I created, so that now when I create this rubric, I've got my custom scaled rubric that is applied to the scale that I created without having to type it in every time for every criteria. And when I go to use that, if I edit and I switch over to this custom scaled rubric that we just created, you can see that when I go to grade that project now, and I look at the rubric, see, it's got my custom scaled rubric already applied. Quick and easy. I only had to make my scale once to apply it in the rubric. And then when I go to grade, I'll have my scaled rubric that I can do and grade. It's based off of the 10 scale, which will apply over correctly with our percentage-based gradebook. And I can use this rubric on anything that I want to. So this is how you create a custom rubric in your grade setup so that you can use it across assessments throughout your whole course. All right, thanks guys.